This whole situation is still developing, and honestly all I can really compare this to is like what happened with the Weinstein allegations. It starts with one, and then hopefully we can get more people to come out about these claims. 2 years ago, I uploaded a video reporting, summarizing, and addressing sexual assault allegations against Datsik. And in the video, I made a comment that potentially the allegations against Datsik might open the doors to more victims coming out with their stories in the music scene, similar to what occurred with the Weinstein trials. And while it looks like I was right that more people would come out with their own stories, I was wrong on the time that it would occur. It is currently 2020. 2 years after the video I uploaded, and within the past month, there have been a lot of stories coming out regarding different artists within the EDM scene, and this time around, the artists in question are a lot more closer with the communities that I am involved with and the music that I work with. With Datsik, I felt a lot more like an outsider. I never listened to his music, and I had never used his music in any of my content. A lot of what I learned about Datsik, I had learned around the time when I was researching him, and prior to the video, I only really knew him as some dubstep artist. In this video, I'm going to be talking about two artists, that being Aero Chord and Graves. There's a lot that I want to cover in this video, and I don't have any idea how long it's going to be by the end of writing the script, but I guess we will see what happens. I know that by the time I upload this video, it's going to have already been a couple days since the situation had arisen, but for this video, I wanted to prioritize accurate and thorough reporting over being the first to address the topic. I'm going to be starting off with covering everything that is going on with Graves. Before I continue, I quickly want to outline that from here on out, the video will discuss sensitive topics like sexual assault and rape, so viewer discretion is advised. For all those who don't know what is going on, I'm going to try and summarize and compact everything regarding Graves. Graves, or also known as Christian, is a Hawaiian DJ and electronic producer who had a very extensive and successful past. Mostly known for making trap music, Graves personally was not an artist I listened to a lot, but earned a high reputation and fame for being credited on tracks with big-name artists like Justin Bieber, Kanye West, and Kid Cudi before going independent. For people within my community, Graves has even been on Monstercat, credited for doing a remix on a track for Pegboard Nerds and Jaws titled Get On Up. On the 10th of June of this year, the Twitter user tiffanynonaka quote retweeted a thread of users who were tweeting out the age at which they had endured sexual assault. Tweeting, "I was 19, I was 22. Underneath the tweet, Tiffany tweeted 3 screenshots of stories of those two encounters. The first from when she was 19, she was intoxicated and was taken advantage of. The second story, however, recounts the story of a well-known Hawaiian DJ. I'm going to read out the screenshots, but if you would like to read them yourself, I will include the screenshots on screen as well as include links in the video description. If you don't want to hear me read them, then you can skip forward to the timestamp on screen. I was 22. During the time I had broken up with a toxic ex, I was depressed and didn't know what to do. There was a guy who was a well-known Hawaiian DJ who kept commenting on my pictures as well as liking all my pictures. By the way, he unliked and removed all comments after I stopped hanging out with him, and asked to hang out. In my mind, I was like, sure, why not? Honestly, who wouldn't want that? A well-known DJ reaching out to hang out? That's pretty dope. The first time we hung out, it was honestly a chill hangout. I enjoyed listening to his problems and sharing my problems. The second time was when he basically forced it. All of a sudden, he was acting as if we were in a relationship, going all up on me and whatnot. I felt so awkward and didn't even know what to do. He kept pushing it when I was saying no. I've clearly said no countless of times, making up excuses, but he still refused to stop. Once again, I eventually just gave in and he forced his fingers in me, which left me sore for days. I left after and never hung out with him again. Christian, aka We Are Graves, fuck you. Tiffany was met with a lot of support from people on Twitter, and sadly what came of the revelations was that Tiffany was not the only one. Other members of the community began sending their stories to Tiffany, where she posted screenshots of more stories in the tweet thread, then commenting that there were many more. I will not read out these stories to save for time, but I will show them on screen briefly, and will be sure to include them in the description below. These stories went viral in the music scene, and it didn't take long for Graves to respond. In a now deleted tweet, Graves responded, "I recently got myself into a situation where the words 'I'm sorry' are not nearly enough. I've realized I've caused great harm. I was seeing someone for a short time, and I wildly misjudged the nature of our relationship. At the time, I thought our physical relationship was totally consensual. I realize now my actions were inappropriate, violating, and totally unacceptable. I take this very seriously. Consent is something that is foundational, and there should never be an interpretation of the truth. I am crushed by the trauma I have caused you and anyone else along the way. I preach love, compassion, empathy, and understanding in my home, and I'm learning from this. I'm going to seek counseling to focus on becoming a better person. Christian." With everyone coming out with their stories and experiences with Graves, it didn't take long for most people to conclude that the apology would not be enough. A lot of comments saying that Graves was an open secret to the injustice in Hawaii, and that the apology was very lackluster and hollow. Shortly after he tweeted the apology, he promptly deleted his socials, and since the 10th of June, has not been seen active anywhere. His Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube were deactivated, but his streaming sites are currently still up. The fallout afterwards led to many artists expressing disappointment towards Graves, the reaction most significant at the time being from R.L. Grimes, who not long prior had released a collaboration with Graves on Sable Valley. R.L. Grimes commenting, "I am horrified and disheartened to hear the recent news regarding Graves, and I appreciate and admire the bravery it took for the victims to speak out. I have zero tolerance for this kind of conduct. Out of respect and in support of the victims, I am removing Arcus from all DSPs. Additionally, I will be donating a portion of the profits from the 3 songs he contributed to on Nova to RAIN, which is an abbreviation for Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network." And as it stands, this is where Graves lies. From what I've seen, there hasn't been any updates since. The only thing I have found activity-wise is that his Patreon was rebranded to Ableton Lessons, so if you were looking for Ableton Lessons, it would be advised you could probably get them elsewhere. Where I currently stand with this, the extensive number of stories that have come out against Graves, and the lengthy detailed stories leave me to wonder if there are more victims than we are currently aware of. Like I mentioned, Graves was rather infamous locally, and I personally find that his reply, as most others feel, was very empty and lackluster. There isn't much that could be said, so at this point, Graves' story ends. In news closer to home, and much more recent, we have the developments of the statements made against Aero Chord. Aero Chord, also known as Alex, is a Greek producer who has been within the electronic scene for a while, more focused within the genre of trap and bass music. Within the Monstercat community, he was a staple name and an artist who had released regularly since 2014. He had released many singles and a few EPs, with his main claim to fame being his track Surface, which went extremely viral, garnering him hundreds of millions of views on all platforms. Outside of Monstercat, Aero Chord was also a frequent visitor of NCS and had remixed a lot of songs from popular artists, including GTA. Aero Chord had recently been put into the spotlight after MYLK had posted an extended Twitter post detailing her experiences with Aero Chord and her story of sexual assault. MYLK, also known as Yuki, is also an artist that is well known within the circle of electronic music, having featured on numerous tracks and sharing many social circles that Aero Chord is also in. On the 25th of June, MYLK posted to her Twitter, "I am done being silent," with a twitlonger attached. The full link brings up a very long post going into a lot of detail and series of events. To save time, I will not be reading the full twitlonger, but I will include a link in the description below for anyone who wants to read the full post, and I will try to summarize and highlight some of the parts from the full post. In the post, she prefaces that she had brought up the situation when it had occurred 6 years ago on her personal Facebook, and had been meaning to make a proper thorough statement, but she didn't have the platform she does now. This is true. A screenshot was found from the original post back in 2014 from her Facebook account, with a photo of the screenshot on the screen right now. She then starts off the twitlonger detailing her relations with Aero Chord, explaining that they had met up before MYLK was an alias, and that they were friends who had played games online. She mentioned that Aero Chord at one point acted flirtatious, but when she expressed she didn't feel the same, the topic was dropped, and that was that. They had one day decided to meet up in the UK where MYLK lives, and since their birthdays lined up closely, decided that Aero Chord would come over for a week and stay over at her apartment so they could save money over booking a hotel. MYLK at the time was living in a one-room studio apartment, and as such noted that she would get changed and have to share a bed with friends, but also added that she had done so before and was comfortable doing so regardless of gender. When they got into bed, Aero Chord reached for a kiss, but MYLK declined and said no. Following, Aero Chord proceeded to try kissing her 4 more times before MYLK broke down crying. But it didn't stop there. She notes that Aero Chord apologizes, but then afterwards starts begging for sex. When she turned off the lights, he continued into the night, touching her in her sleep. The following day, MYLK tried to act as if nothing had happened, but was still very much under shock. She recounts how having breakfast with Aero Chord, he was very demanding and was rude to staff at restaurants. When they tried discussing what had happened the night prior, Aero Chord began to break down, but MYLK would not have any of it. On days they had nothing planned, MYLK left her door open so that Aero Chord could explore the city on his own. It was during this time that she would tell her friends and seek help. MYLK expresses that her friends knew about Aero Chord. She avoided hanging out with them because she didn't want to make the situation awkward. When suggested she kick him out, MYLK would feel bad that someone she had invited as a guest from another country would be kicked out onto the streets despite what he had done to her. It wasn't until one day she had decided that she had had enough, and on the day where Aero Chord wasn't in the house, MYLK had booked the cheapest hotel, and upon Aero Chord's return, had booked a taxi and removed him from her apartment. Prior to the removal, MYLK had set up a secret Skype call with her sister and 2 close friends, so that they could listen in case MYLK's safety was put at risk. Sadly, there was no recording of the call, but this call will be important, as I will point out later. Aero Chord, upon being confronted, had hurled a lot of abuse towards MYLK before leaving. A few days later, MYLK took the steps to contact the authorities, but mentioned she didn't have a lot of luck and that her experience with coming to help was rather damaging. At one point, MYLK had attempted suicide and was taken to the hospital and put on medication. Regarding what happened with the police report, it was realized that there was nothing they could do because Aero Chord had already left the UK. but it was noted that Aero Chord is currently wanted and to this day is still wanted in the UK with an open case against him. I implore you all to read the full twit longer if you have the chance. What followed was an outpour of support for MYLK, many other fellow artists sending their support and condolences for what had happened to her. Regarding the Skype call I mentioned earlier, there was one artist who also had this to add on to the situation. Feint quote tweeted MYLK's reply and said, "Proud of you. I can remember at the time how frustrating it was being told that nothing could be done, but I'm glad progress is being made. And for anybody doubting, I was in the Skype call where I heard him basically admit to it." So there was a lot unpacked. At this point, it became a waiting game for if Aero Chord would reply or have anything to say in return. In the midst of everything unfolding, some people began wondering if Monstercat, the Canadian EDM music label, would have a response to all of this as well, seeing as Aero Chord is one of many recurring artists with a rather large footprint in their history of releases. And after a couple of hours, Monstercat did actually release a statement replying to MYLK's tweet with the image reading, "Monstercat has decided to end our working relationship with the artist Aero Chord effective immediately. We're sorry for the delay in the response. We needed a bit of time to investigate the situation further. This is what we have uncovered." In November of 2014, a Monstercat team member was approached by a mutual friend about an incident that occurred between two of our artists. The team member asked if there was something he could do to help, but was told that there was nothing he could do at the time, which lines up with MYLK's recount of events. In April of 2017, the same team member was approached by the victim to be made aware of the details of the incident. In this discussion, she explained that she was handling the case with the police and requested that our team member keep that confidential. The conversation closed with a statement that she was going to leave it to the police to handle. This was our mistake. We should not have left this to the police to have made the final decision on who was in the right or wrong. We should have ended our working relationship with Aero Chord the moment we were first informed of any issues between the two of them. Systematically, cases in this matter are rarely brought forward and even less with actual convictions made. We need to believe survivors and we need to do a better job of creating an environment where they feel safe and can come forward about issues. We want to apologize to you, Yuki, for not taking more critical action sooner. We must do what we can as a collective to stand by our artists and community to ensure they are protected and supported at all times. Following this, there was also a rather positive response. There were some people calling for Monstercat to make this an official statement on all platforms and not just a response tweet. However, in regards to that, MYLK has confirmed that Monstercat will be rolling out some sort of full statement in the near future, which at the time of recording this has not yet been released. MYLK also tweeted saying, "At Monstercat, thank you for taking action and I really appreciate your support on this. I accept your apology and I appreciate that my voice is heard this time. I want to remind people to know that this is not about at Monstercat, but about at Aero Chord's actions." So for now, I will move along with the story and put Monstercat to the side as they are not the main concern. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of people were waiting for Aero Chord to make a statement, and it did come finally when Aero Chord tweeted out this image. Haven't logged on here for a long time, but just did to say this. I completely deny this crazy accusation against me. It is an absolute fabrication and a blatant attempt at slander. It is truly unfair to hold someone guilty in the court of public opinion without any proof, and in fact, the police looked into this years ago and found no evidence of any wrongdoing. Alex. Well, if you were curious what the general response to that was, then... Personally, as far as I see, MYLK's extensive detailed write-up had a lot more points that were matched by other people within the community and also synced up well with other posts of hers. Meanwhile, Aero Chord has not brought up anything to show for in his defense aside from that the claims that were brought up were merely false allegations intended to slander his name. A few days later, some new screenshots arose from Ash Stahl, who currently manages Said the Sky, showing a brief back and forth between Ash and Aero Chord, reading, "Hi, Aero Chord here. Are you Twine's manager?" Hey, I am. K, real talk, I would never be able to work with a manager this hot. She would just overrule me on everything. Aero Chord actually replies to this saying, "It was a joke. You laughed then, but of course cut that part out to show how offended you are 5 years later. Absurd." And then included a subsequent screenshot to the conversation. This was the last public message we have from Aero Chord, but I wanted to highlight these screenshots from Ash because I think her reply summarizes very well why this is important. For anyone unfamiliar with the situation, as a standalone moment, this is simply an inappropriate comment, but alongside the serious allegations against him, it helps to further paint the picture of what he feels is appropriate when interacting with women. I think the blanket weak defense that MYLK's allegations are completely false simply don't work when your actions in the past reinforce the statements against you, that you're a creep and a sexual abuser. People have begun to dig deeper and have even found that Aero Chord may have started dating his current girlfriend when she was underage. People bringing up that Aero Chord may have started dating his girlfriend when she was 15 and was even featured in Aero Chord's Play Your Part music video. However, if this is true, the relationship is not actually illegal. In Greece, the age of consent is 15, which would have made this relationship completely fine in the court of law. I will not be naming who the person is out of respect for privacy. However, Aero Chord's girlfriend tweeted out this: "In my country, you are allowed to work, be intimate, drink, etc. from the age of 15. I used to work as a model for many years and the music video was just another job. Monstercat knew my age and there's nothing wrong about it. Just me doing my job and getting paid for it." Again, however, though this relationship is not illegal in Greece, it does bring into question a lot of morality issues and just makes me personally question Aero Chord and him as a person. Checking Aero Chord's Wikipedia shows that he is around the age of 28, and I can't imagine that his dating pool would be so small that he would resort to a 15-year-old for a relationship. And as it stands, this is where we are. At this point, it is only speculation what will happen next, and what is in store for everyone involved. Since the fallout, there have already been some changes that have occurred. Trap Nation, the largest music promotional channel on YouTube, has taken down all of Aero Chord's uploads. Monstercat has taken down Aero Chord off of their artist roster, and has taken down the Play Your Part music video. And what happens from here on out is really all in the air. Since then, a lot of people have expressed different opinions. I sort of want to also throw in my 2 cents regarding the issue because though this is about Aero Chord, there are a lot of parallels to other situations and artists that have gone through similar. A statement I have seen a lot is that people should separate art from the artist, so that people can continue listening to their music. Similarly with what happened to the Kevin Spacey revelations and the movies that he participated in. People want to no longer support the artist while still supporting their work. I think straight away that statement shows that there's a bit of a flaw in the hypocrisy. Personally, I believe that if you truly want to stop supporting someone, then you should stop giving people exposure. If you are still streaming their music or watching their movies, you are still supporting them. In streaming someone's music, you are giving the artist streams and revenue and keeping them relevant. I will not deny that it so happens to be the case that people who are talented sometimes do bad stuff. But if the options given to me was to either keep supporting someone who has done bad or support someone else, whether it's an already successful artist or another up-and-coming artist, I would support someone new. Bad people are replaceable. Something else I've also seen is people who will ask people to elaborate and wait for more evidence to come forth. I think in a perfect world, it would be great if in every scenario, all of the evidence and chat logs and just everything was there for everyone. But of course, that is not always the case. In regards to the specific case with MYLK and Aero Chord, I personally find it kind of weird when people ask MYLK to elaborate or bring more evidence, even with her large write-up, when Aero Chord hasn't even given any substantial evidence to refute MYLK's claims. I say this as someone who has done the same in the past. If we lived in a perfect world where we could just wait for more evidence, then I think it would make sense to simply wait for more evidence. But I don't think we should fault people for coming to conclusions with the evidence and claims we have now. And if there was to be more evidence brought up, I think we should allow people to learn and to change their mind if need be. But as it stands right now, it is my personal opinion that MYLK has a much better case than Aero Chord. One more thing I want to bring up is Monstercat's involvement. In the middle of all that was going on, MYLK did clarify that the spotlight should be on Aero Chord instead of Monstercat, but I do feel that it is also important to at least point out a few things. Number one is that on a statistical level, it was very probable that a label as large and as significant as Monstercat would at some point have to deal with a bad actor. I think that communities that grow large should have a way of dealing with bad actors and future-proofing so that if a scenario is to occur, that a community can move on and transition as smoothly as possible. Something that I have seen people comment about and is something I have also mentioned is the idea of Monstercat and other labels similar taking down Aero Chord's music. A while ago, I posted this tweet. When Mistabishi was dropped from hospital records for racist comments, they removed his music and donated money they earned from his music to charity. I think this would be good for Monstercat to do the same with Aero Chord. Make this the standard in dealing with bad musicians. If you want to hear more about the whole Mistabishi controversy, you can search it up on Google, and you'll find a bit about it. But what I want to get at is that I have not seen many other labels, if at all, dealing with a bad artist as well and as efficiently as Hospital Records did with Mistabishi and his racist remarks. When contemplating the concept with Aero Chord and Monstercat, there were a couple issues that had arisen that people were concerned with. Firstly, the old compilation albums would become inconsistent with missing songs. Secondly, all of Monstercat's old album mixes would still have Aero Chord music. And thirdly is the legal standpoint behind removing his discography. In regards to the first point, if Monstercat has to remove his discography, it wouldn't be the first time Monstercat would have had to have removed music and compensate albums. Many people are familiar with Overwork and their track House. Back in 2015, House was removed from all platforms because Overwork wanted to be completely independent and the track was removed from the 007 compilation.
To compensate for the missing track, Solero and Stephen Walking's track Ampersand filled the gap and kept the compilation full. Removing Aero Chord's discography would be a much larger puzzle to fill, but it wouldn't be impossible. As of recording this video, Monstercat has released over 2,100 songs, and finding suitable replacements would not be impossible. A few nights ago, my Discord server and I tried to piece together suitable replacements from other Monstercat release albums that had songs that didn't get the spotlight. I'll put some screenshots on the screen, but as one can see, replacing tracks is for sure not a problem. On the second point, music can be redistributed and mixes can be remade. A rather notable example was the redistribution on Riot's track Jungle Theory, after there was an early version distributed and a final mastered version later redistributed on all platforms. For those of you who want a newer, more niche example, recently Monstercat's 9-year anniversary album had an alternate version of Stonebank's cover of Coming On Strong that was accidentally distributed, but has since been fixed. The point is, mixes can be remade and redistributed, and I can say knowing this, but Monstercat has kept a backup of every single Monstercat podcast and Call of the Wild project file on backup. I'd imagine the same goes with their album mixes. The last hurdle, however, would be the legal standpoint. Every artist has had to sign some sort of contract to hand over their copyright. To suddenly make changes to any agreements is always a nightmare, and because we don't know the legality of doing such massive changes behind the scenes, we can't say for sure how long it would take to do this on a scale as large as what we have now. If that was to be the case, as always, there's so much more that goes on behind the scenes, so we may never really know for sure what is actually going on and the difficulty of actually playing out these ideas, so it is best to approach such a situation with patience. The final note I want to hit on is, again, the spotlight that is on Monstercat, because as mentioned by other people within the community, labels can have a lot of power in being able to hold artists accountable, but also have the power to continue abusing, silencing, and profiting off of bad actors. While this time around it is Monstercat who has to make moves, we shouldn't forget that a few years ago it was Hospital Records who was in the spotlight. And even with what is going on now, labels like No Copyright Sounds and even Rocket League, who has one track from Aero Chord, have yet to make any sort of statement on the issue, as they have also signed tracks from Aero Chord. I believe that with times like this, now is a great time for labels to make a stance and to be held accountable for whatever next steps they are going to do. And soon we will be able to see and judge on which labels decide to either take action or lay back and let inaction dictate their future. Well, that was a long video to record. To whoever made it to the end, thank you for making it to the end of the video. Feel free to comment below what you guys think of the whole situation, and consider joining my Discord server. I'll include a link in the pinned comment down below in the comment section. Anyways, I'm gonna head out. Hope you all have a good day, and I'll see you all next time. See ya.